In today's show, on the eve of the NBA draft, the Blazers don't want to trade Damian Lillard. They might not want to trade the number 3 overall pick either. Let's talk about how it all might shake out. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Free on all platforms, coming at you every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it your first listen, part of your daily routine. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. It's the final show before the NBA draft. Here we are, just hours before the draft starts. You are listening to Thursday, June 22nd's show. Thanks for tuning in. It is, in many ways, the most important draft the Blazers have had in 15 years. It's certainly the most important draft night they've had since 2007 when they had the number 1 overall pick and they were choosing between Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. How did that go? How did that one work out? Just kidding. Only trying to bring positivity to today's episode. I want to, it's been a long road here. So the Blazers haven't played a game since April. All of May we slogged through it. Now we're 3 full weeks into June and we've slogged through it. Some of this is the sort of national media obsession with getting Damian Lillard to play in the state of New York. Some of this is just like Dame has been more public with his very real consideration that the era could end. And the Blazers have just a massive night tomorrow or this evening. I'm recording this on Wednesday night, but massive night on Thursday evening, making their decision on what the direction will be. And, they've probably made a bunch of the decisions, to be clear, but the final determination on what their direction will be. And I want this show to kind of prep you for that. I don't want it to be super ham-fisted and dramatic. This is the most important draft in the history of mankind. And it's it could be really sad because it might lead to the sort of end of an era if this is the night that Damian Lillard gets traded, but I don't think it will be. I think that will come later if it comes, but it'll be a massive decision one way or another. It is a hugely impactful night, certainly the most important draft of the Damian Lillard era, which began back in 2012. It's a long time. It's a long time and a big night ahead. So I want to talk about the Blazers doing a report that the Blazers have been shutting down trade calls for Dame. Duh. I want to talk about that. Duh. I want to talk about a report that the Cavs have interest in 23 and the Blazers' other second round pick. That's what we'll do, kind of set you up for what to expect from both picks in the first 2 segments. And then I got a story I want to share with you in the third segment. Make sure you stick around for that one. Let's talk about shutting down the Dame trade calls. Adrian Wojnarowski was on the Pat McAfee show. Both Woj and Shams were on the Pat McAfee show. I would wager there is no other show on the internet that gets both Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania in the same week. Very weird. Good for Pat McAfee, I guess. My man never wears sleeves and always wears a gold chain and gets big guests. But on that show, Woj said, he was asked about sort of the Miami Heat, and he says that they're still anxiously trying to figure out what's going to happen with Dame, and if this is the summer that he asks out, and if he asks out, the Heat want to make sure that they are poised to make some kind of crappy Tyler Hero offer so they can pry Dame away and whatever. Woj didn't say that. That's my editorializing. Woj said the following, and I'm quoting here. I've transcribed it. That so far, the Blazers have, quote, shut down anybody who has called about the possibility of trying to trade for him. The him, of course, being Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard Sr. This is news in that Adrian Wojnarowski knows that the Blazers have received calls of teams pursuing Damian Lillard, and he can confirm with his reporting that the Blazers have rebuffed those calls. But in the grand scheme of where we are, from April to June and the 6 weeks of podcasts. And shout out to my everydayers who have been slogging along with me since the last time the Blazers played a basketball game. You'll remember that they actually shut everyone down at the end of March. So we're closing in on 3 months of since the Blazers have played a meaningful basketball game. We'll always have that road game in Utah when Dame, Ant, and Shaedon Sharpe all looked very good together. But nothing has changed. This is the status quo. Damian Lillard has said he wants to be in Portland. The Trailblazers have said they want to maximize Dame's timeline, trade for win now veterans. They haven't said that specifically, but maximize Damian Lillard's timeline and build with him in Portland. The implication being that Dame's demand for them trading for win now veterans, they will do their best to meet those demands and go forward with a team that can be competitive immediately in the fall with Dame on the roster. That's what they both want. The thing that has always been out there is the but and the if. If, and Dame has said this himself, you do not need sources to know this. If the Blazers can't deliver on his request to play with veteran teammates, then he would have a conversation about what his future might be. So, of course, they're not taking trade calls now because the decision will come when they're on the clock at 3. Whatever the Charlotte Hornets do, it will dictate whatever the Blazers are able to do, and from there they will make a decision. So, of course, they're not taking phone calls now because that's not what the direction they want to go. The sort of the Dame trade conversation happens after they make the decision at 3, whether they're able to trade it on draft night or whether they have to move forward with a rookie because they don't find the value at 3, and then they may have to have that conversation with Dame. But I'm like, nothing has materially changed since the moment that Dame explained what he wanted very clearly at X interviews. Wants to play with vets. He's not interested in building. That's about it for 19-year-olds. That route is not my route. When Dame said exactly that, nothing has changed from there to here. Both sides want the same thing. It's about whether they can get it done. And whether they can get it done is really the big question on draft night. Right now, FanDuel.com has Brandon Miller a heavy favorite to go number 2 overall, minus 650. About $650 to $100. Heavy favorite to go minus 2 overall. You recall that last week, Brandon Miller was the betting favorite to go number 2 overall. Over the weekend, it switched to Scoot. They went back on Monday, both Scoot and Brandon Miller back on Monday in Charlotte to work out. And Brandon Miller has become the betting favorite. Adrian Wojnarowski reports that Charlotte is still leaning towards Scoot. This seems to be Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports has reported the same thing. They're leaning towards Scoot. Or excuse me, they're leaning. Whoa! Rewind. They're leaning towards Brandon Miller. Hornets are leaning towards Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller is the betting favorite, and he is what both Woj and Jake Fisher have reported is what Charlotte's going for. So that means, and I'm getting ahead of myself there, that means that Scoot Henderson is likely to be on the board when the Blazers make their selection. In some ways, this complicates things because there just aren't enough guard minutes around to play Scoot Henderson and Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe. There is no way you can go into camp with Dame, Ant, and Scoot Henderson. There's just, you got to, something's got to give. And whether that is the end of the Damian Lillard era or just a more simpler path of trading Anthony Simons for some taller players, something's got to give. But materially, nothing has really changed here. It was basically on lottery night, it seemed like the Charlotte Hornets were leaning Brandon Miller. Here we are on the eve of the draft, and who knows what will happen, right? Like, who knows what will happen? This is all speculation. This particular episode has a really short shelf life. That's why we'll do another one on Friday. Make sure you come back for that one. But nothing has really changed. Everything, there's been a million stories and a million headlines, and I've done a million podcasts, y'all, and I in some ways I feel like it, but I'm here by choice. I'm not a prisoner of the moment. I'm someone who enjoys doing this. Brandon Miller's still the guy picked to go 2, pegged, predicted, whatever you want to say, to go 2. The Blazers are likely to be on the board, or at least it seems likely to be on the board with Scoot Henderson available, armed with a valuable trade chip they could use to trade for an upgrade, which they have pretty much made clear that is the path that they'd like to go, and certainly it's the path that Damian Lillard would like to go. They're shutting down trade calls for Dame. It seems like they want him to be here. Now it's the time where they make a decision. it is lining up for them to have Scoot Henderson on the board and be able to call teams and say, Toronto, New Orleans, whatever it might be, the Clippers, if you really want to dream, Scoot Henderson is available in a trade. We basically have to attach Anthony Simons to make the money work in a big trade. What does a Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons package get you? It's what Dame wants. If the Blazers are real and they want to follow, if you trust what the Blazers have been saying is that they want to maximize Dame's timeline, they kind of got to follow his personal requests or have a tougher conversation. It looks like it'll be there for him. There's some reporting from Jonathan Givony and also from Kristen Peak of Yahoo Sports that the Blazers do not want to trade the 3rd overall pick. And I think, as well as Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports reported yesterday, that the Blazers will only trade the 3rd overall pick for a select few of elite players. If they don't, if that package isn't on the board, it puts them in that awkward spot of having to decide, hey, Scoot Henderson is more valuable than the trade packages that are available, or Brandon Miller is more valuable than the trade packages we have available. We got to keep him. And then you have to have the conversation with Damian Lillard. And maybe they thread the needle and they trade Anthony Simons in 23 and they get something else back, or they unlock the future picks from the Bulls and they trade those future picks down the line and make moves. But it seems to me pretty unlikely that the Blazers both select a player at 3 who's on the roster when training camp starts and have a happy Damian Lillard in tow. And if they have an unhappy Damian Lillard in tow, my assumption is that will be solved this summer. So that's what's at stake. That's what's at stake when the draft starts. Just everything. That's all. Just everything. Let's talk about the Blazers' other pick in the 2nd round. They've got another one. It is the 23rd overall selection, and reportedly, the Cleveland Cavaliers are interested. That's what we'll talk about in the 2nd segment. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Birddogs. Comfortable pants. Comfortable shorts even. Look, they look like khakis, but they don't have that stiff, restrictive cotton that you might be used to if you're rocking khaki shorts. They fit better. They got built-in liner. Plus, they got anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day. This cloud knit fabric is comfortable. It's versatile. Listen, I'm rocking it in the park. I'm pushing the stroller around. I'm going to the farmer's market, and then I'm hustling back to the house to eat the fresh pint of blueberries I just bought. Shout out to the listener to Locked On Blazers who I saw while wearing my Bird Dog shorts at that very farmer's market, who was listening to the podcast also at that farmer's market and showed me on their phone that they were listening to the podcast. How fun is that? Out in the world, rocking Bird Dogs. If you want to do that or something similar, why not go to birddogs.com right now? Plus, you get a free Yeti-style tumbler with every order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnba, birddogs.com/lockedonnba for a free Yeti-style tumbler with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. I promise you. All right. On yesterday's show, I promised to make sure that I got all the butt that was being scuttled. It's scuttlebutt season. And in addition to the reporting from Adrian Wojnarowski on the Pat McAfee show, Brian Windhorst was on ESPN Cleveland. It's a radio show that they also broadcast on YouTube. Broadcasting a radio program also on YouTube? A brilliant idea. Maybe I'll try it sometime. If you're watching on YouTube, I appreciate you. But in that show, it was ESPN Cleveland, so it's like a Cavaliers-focused radio show. It's like the local ESPN radio show based in Cleveland. And they're asking Windy about kind of what he's heard about the Cavs and what they're interested in. He says that the players that the Cavaliers are getting calls on because they would be willing to move them are not any of their core 4 guys. It's not Evan Mobley. It's not Jared Allen. It's not Donovan Mitchell. It's not Darius Garland. It's Dean Wade and Cedi Osman. Dean Wade is a big kind of 3-4 who can shoot it, and Cedi Osman is a dude who I thought was going to be. You would ask me 4 years ago about Cedi Osman, I was all in. He is like a totally competent backup forward. You're not getting a lot of sexy calls on those two gentlemen, but in addition, Wendy mentioned that the Cavs continue to have interest in the 23rd overall pick from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Brian Windhorst called it actionable news that there has been a lot of talk specifically with the Cleveland Cavaliers about acquiring 23. And in addition to acquiring 23, the Cavaliers have had long-standing interest in Nazir Little. Sort of like, if you are trying to put 2 and 2 together here, they do not equal 4. You're not going to swap Dean Wade for 23 and Nazir Little. It would be more than that. Maybe it's just 23. Maybe it's just Nazir Little, as Wendy says in that little piece that was on that ESPN Cleveland shared on their website. It's like a 9-minute clip that you can find if you search on YouTube. ESPN Cleveland, Brian Windhorst. You can find it. You can find it. I promise you. But like it's, you know, Cleveland is trying to upgrade. Their big hole is at small forward. Nazir Little he's under a really reasonable contract, 4 years, $28 million, basically making $7 million a year over the next 4 years. What a steal if he turns into an NBA player. He just hasn't been that yet. He's shown flashes, and then he's been hurt. It's inconsistency and inability to stay on the floor. If he can get on the floor, I think Nazir Little can prove to be a valuable rotational NBA player, but he just hasn't been able to do it with consistency yet. Even then, he's on such a sweet deal, like team-friendly deal. You're not flipping him in 23 to get Cedi Osman. It's not that appealing. It'd have to be more from Cleveland. But I think in general, it's unlikely. The Blazers have 3, they have 23, and they have 43 in the second round. They're not going to bring 3 rookies in. Damian Lillard's not going to roll with that. And the team just has more. They just need more depth. They need NBA quality depth. I don't think you could bring in 3 rookies to this particular roster and expect to be good. Some rookies are good. Almost all of them are bad. Some rookies are good. Almost all rookies are bad, though. It generally the ones who are like positively impactful are the exceptions. Even the players who are going to be good are usually net negatives, and the rookie season is a hard league to break into. So 23 could be on the move. If 23 is not on the move, how about we round up some mock drafts? Yesterday we did the mock drafts at 3. Let's do mock drafts at 23. Some names to know. ESPN Jonathan Givony has the Blazers taking Jaime Jaquez at UCLA. If you're a longtime listener and everyday listener to the program, shout out to my everydayers. You know that I love Jaime Jaquez. He was someone who, heading into the NCAA tournament, I believe I did a show in between the first 2 weekends, so prior to the Sweet 16, where I said that I thought Jaime Jaquez, from watching him, I'm not someone who watches a ton of college basketball, from watching him, that I always thought he was like kind of an NBA player, but then he was mocked in the second round. So to see him now be a first round pick, I'm like, hey, look at that. Someone who I watched play something like 10 or 12 college basketball games I was right about. And is he going to be good in the league? I don't know, but at least he was probably going to go in the first round now. Big fan of his game. I think he's going to be a good shooter in the NBA. He's not like this crazy athlete. He kind of plays at his own speed. He scored a lot in the post in college, but he can pass. Jaime Jaquez, big fan of his game. That's ESPN Jonathan Givony has him at 23 to the Blazers. For the Ringer has James Nagy, a not yet 19-year-old big man who's playing for Barcelona in Spain. We'll not 100% sure he comes over this year based on what I've read, but he is like built like a Mack truck, rim-running big man. The Blazers need big man depth. He's really intriguing. He's probably not ready to play as an NBA player at age 19 next season, but sometimes you go upside with late first-round picks. You're very unlikely to find an NBA player anyways. There's just like, after you get out of the top 10, the chances that you find a dude who will play in the league is relatively low. It's hard to draft. So I think worth taking a shot on someone with his type of upside who's already playing, in the second best league in the world in Spain. That's the Ringer has James Nagy at 23. At Yahoo, Kristen Peak, friend of the program, has Noah Clowney, who, if you listen to her episode, said, I'm going to mock Noah Clowney to the Blazers at 23. And there she goes, why would she lie? It was coming out 2 days after she was on the program. But big man from Alabama, 6'10", is maybe probably a more 4 than 5 in the league, but certainly is going to play a bunch of 5 in the NBA. And there's just, the draft itself is a little bit weak on centers. And so if you're looking for someone who can play center in the NBA, I meant 4 early as opposed to 5 early, but I think he's probably a center for forever. And once he's ready to go physically. But Clowney would, if you are after Derek Lively, there's just not a lot of centers available. Clowney would be there, and certainly an intriguing option at 23. The Athletic, Sam Vecini has Leonard Miller of the G League Ignite going to Blazers at 23. I like Leonard Miller because he's funky. He's weird. He's like a 6'9" wing guard forward who just like, he's got a lot of funk to his game. He takes weird jumpers. He drives kind of somewhere herky-jerky, sometimes lightning quick, fast on a couple moves, sometimes a little bit slower. It's powerful big wing, skinny frame though. I'm intrigued. CC very intrigued, to quote Dan Labatard's dad. And on the NBA big board, friend of the program, Rafael Barlow, has Noah Clowney also going to the Blazers at 23. Certainly someone who will be there in the range if they do decide to keep that pick. Like I said, I don't think they'll take 3 rookies, but if they trade 3, maybe they take 23 because you could, if you're trying to build a competitive team that's going to be as expensive as Dame plus whoever they trade for 3 plus Jeremy Grant, having rookies who can contribute is vital to being a team that can continue, it has any like chance of growing. You have to nail late first round picks. That's the nature of keeping your window open in the sort of new era of expensive rosters. So Cavs interested in 23, Cavs are interested in Nasir Little, and those are some options at 23. I have one story I want to share with you to close the show. There's been a lot of angst in the sort of Blazer fandom about what's next. Some people are deeply convinced that it's time to trade Damian Lillard and start over and rebuild and go in that direction. Some people are deeply convinced that you can't get a player as quality as Dame on the roster ever again, and to not give it one last shot to try to build around him when you have the path to do so would be malpractice. Deeply convinced, deeply divided. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't. If I had to guess, I think they're going to trade 3 because that's what they have to do kind of by mandate. But there certainly is a lot of reporting from plugged-in people that say they're not going to. And if they don't, where does that leave them? I don't think they can go the middle road. They've kind of said that they're comfortable doing it. I don't trust them. It's a strange world, and it's going to be an even stranger world as we get closer to draft night and the anxiety builds on what the heck is going to happen with this team. So I want to offer a little story time that I hope brings some perspective on where we are. That's what I will do to close the show. But before we do that, I want to tell you about the good folks at eBay Motors. Listen, eBay knows what it takes to build a championship team. It's about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And that's why with eBay Motors, you can find the parts and accessories that fit just right every single time. So head on over to eBay Motors. And with their guaranteed fit, you can make sure every part you need fits the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage. Look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, easy to bring home a win when you know the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. The NBA draft is the day after the summer solstice. I'm recording this on the evening of June 21st, the official start of summer here in North America, the United States of America specifically. I believe our whole hemisphere, this part of the globe. It is perhaps fitting that we change seasons as the Blazers are on a course to make major decisions about what their future will look like. As the seasons shift, so do the fates of the Trailblazers. I'm not a big solstice person. Like full disclosure, in my house, I know when the seasons come, and I know when the moon shifts. I know when the sun shifts into Cancer because it's Cancer season. That is something we know in my house. But I've been to one summer solstice party in the summer of 2009 for about 4 months. I lived in Anchorage, Alaska. had a job in Anchorage. And I went to a Solstice Party a few hours north of Anchorage, a little bit just north of Talkeetna, Alaska, if you're familiar with beautiful Central Alaska. It's not even Central Alaska. It's like South Central. It's a big state. But I went to a Solstice Party in Talkeetna. And I went because they told me it was a party. And I was 23 or whatever. I was in. Cool. We're going to celebrate the sun. And the bars will be open until 5 or something because it's Alaska. Great. Bluegrass, camp out under the never-ending sun, celebrate the sweet beauty of the sun in a place where there is real darkness and real light. I never experienced that before. Never had a summer solstice party. It's like whatever. There was a surprise, though, for me. It was a celebration. It was music, all different kinds of music, and there was crafts and drinking and carrying on and cavorting. All types of fun. But there was a tinge of sadness related to the celebration because you had made it to the longest day of the year. And from that day forward, the days would get shorter. Slowly, for sure, but shorter. And then you'd creep into darkness in a part of the world where when it's dark, it is really stinking dark. Like many, 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 many hours of darkness. Sun going down just after lunch and staying down. And when you are headed for 18 hours of darkness, a 6-hour day or whatever it is, the march towards that is sad. But the day, the day or whatever we were there was a celebration. It's a party. You are celebrating. And I think that is kind of where the Blazers are right now. If you got it in you. Listen, have you been with me and been with the podcast since the season ended? If you've been listening every day or 3-4 times a week, I mean, you listen every day. I do an everyday listen every day. It's make it part of your daily routine, make it your first listen. But if you've been rocking with the show since the season ended, it's been a slog. There's been a lot of Dame drama. A lot of it self-created by Dame this year in a way that hasn't been in the past because I think he's more frustrated than he's been, and he's just older, and as you get older, you get crankier and all those things. But I think if you are able to kind of get past the last 6 or 8 weeks, celebrate the NBA draft. It's finally here. The thing you've been waiting for and marching towards is here. On the other side. You're marching into the unknown, and you're marching into a new era, and you're marching into change and all of those things. And it's okay to celebrate with this tinge of, oh yeah, we know tomorrow is a shorter day than today. We know the darkness is coming, and I think there is a part of this that fits very cleanly. The darkness might be coming. The Blazers might be heading into a new and unknown era. And if you are excited for that, great. But it is new and unknown. And if you are terrified by that because you don't want Damian Lillard to be on another team, you got to celebrate while you can. You got to enjoy it while you can. You got to hold on to it. So imagine me, 23 years old, armed with what I could only imagine were like Coors Lights. And some coworkers that I knew for a very short time while I was up there, going to watch people play music on guitars, bluegrass and rock and roll, out in a field somewhere in Alaska. And the sun doesn't really set. It just moves around the horizon, kind of dips below the mountains because of where we were a little bit, but it doesn't truly get dark. And you stay up all night, and you party and you carry on and you have a whole bunch of fun and you celebrate the longest day of the year in a place where it is truly the longest day of the year, knowing that's what's next is you are marching downhill on the other side. Try to enjoy it while you can. Indeed, as you probably thought, hold on to your joy. we got a big one. The next one you listen to is the big one. They're going to make some decisions on the night of the NBA draft. In fact, live during the draft on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel, you can watch us. Me and my colleagues will be over there popping on and off at various times. We'll pop on and off throughout the draft with coverage with some draft experts. Raphael Barlow will be on there and many others. Leaf Thulin. It'll be a bunch of fun. Nobody has the sort of power of that Locked On does. We have reporters who do this every day in every NBA market, people who cover the team closely on a daily basis. Nobody in the media world does that anymore. We do that. So go check it out. It'll be on the Locked On NBA YouTube page live during the draft. It'll be a bunch of fun. You will see me on there. You'll probably see some videos chopped up here on the YouTube feed if you're looking for them as well. And then when the dust settles, I'll record a show and we'll talk about what they did. It's the thing you've been waiting for. It's the solstice. You've been marching towards this date all year, out of the darkness of 2 years of tanking and into the longest day of the year that should be a celebration, even if you're worried about what's next. Celebrate it in the moment. Get a sunburn. Sit by the campfire. Do what you're going to do. Enjoy yourself in the summer of change, because it's going to come one way or another. And then come back for Friday's show, because we'll do one more of these, and then we'll keep on rolling all summer long as the Blazers head into free agency and shape whatever's next. Whatever's next will be covered here, right here on Locked On Blazers. Tell your friends about the show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.